Hi, my name is Arjun and welcome to ENERGIZE, the tech revolution. Today we have a very special guest amongst us. Lindsay Campbell is a senior regulatory advisor with Validaire, an emission management SaaS company. Lindsay brings over 15 years of experience in the oil and gas sector. Prior to joining Validaire, she worked with the Alberta Energy Regulator, also known as AER, as a senior emissions specialist. In this role, she was a lead contributor in the development and implementation of methane emission reduction requirements in Directive 60. Prior to joining the AER, Lindsay worked in government relations for Encana, now called Ovintiv, a major gas producer in Canada and the US, where she evaluated the environmental and operational implications of emerging provincial and federal climate and air policies. A licensed professional engineer, Lindsay holds a Bachelor of Science in Civil Environmental Engineering from the University of Alberta. Welcome to the show, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting. It's my first podcast, so I'm both a little nervous and excited.
Well, excited to have you here, Lindsay. So, your professional journey has been very exciting. You started off working for a gas producer, then moved into the environmental regulator, and then you joined, an energy tech company. So would love to hear sort of what inspired you to pursue a career track in the environmental air emissions regulation space.
Sure. Yeah, you've given listeners already an overview of how many changes I've gone through so far in my just over 15 years of working in oil and gas, but I'll maybe shed some light on some of the drivers that kind of brought me along that journey. And I'll go way back. I'll go back to when I was a kid, and I was born just outside of Toronto, actually, and we moved to Calgary when I was 4. And we used to drive every summer back to Ontario to go back to a cottage that we had out there. And on those trips, my dad was a civil engineer, and he worked in water and wastewater treatment. So on those trips, I had the pleasure of getting to stop at water and wastewater treatment plants along the way. You can imagine, as a 12-year-old girl, this is maybe not high on the priority list of where I would want to stop. So I had early insights into, environmental related fields, but maybe not specifically where I wanted to spend my day to day. I also had exposure to a father who had a really successful career in civil engineering. So that kind of brought me to pursue a degree in environmental engineering at the University of Alberta. I did the co-op program there. So for anyone that's familiar with a co-op program, you work as well as doing your degree. So I would have these co-op work terms. I had 3 different work terms throughout that degree. And the last work term I had was with Petro-Canada, actually, and loved it. I was working a stint up at the Fort Hills mine in Fort McMurray. I was doing other environmental impact assessment work, working with a great team there. So that was the plan after I finished work, was to go back to Petro-Canada. That summer was the summer that Suncor bought Petro-Canada, and I went to start my first day, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and instead they pulled me into a little room and they said, "Oh, sorry. As a result of this merger, there's some redundancies, and we don't have as many spaces for new engineering students." Okay, so my career in oil and gas was basically done before it even started. I left that day and I wallowed for a while, and then I kind of swallowed that pill, and I reached out to another contact through that co-op engineering program, and they graciously had an opening and offered me a position. So I got into the field, the oil and gas environmental field, through that first job. So I worked environmental consulting for a while, a lot of field work, long days, a lot of travel, which was great and fantastic experience, but it also prompted me to want to maybe explore something closer to home. That was what led into the transition into in-house government relations within Encana. It was my first exposure to policy evaluation, which I found out that I really loved. And And it also exposed me to collaborative work environments between industry and government and regulators. And that's kind of the transition point 4 and a bit years later with Encana, having overlapped with the AER. They created a team that was tasked with delivering on the provincial government's climate strategy. And I had a relationship, I had a good skill set, and I was able to be part of that first team that they created at the AER called the Climate Policy Assurance Team. And then I was at the AER for 7 years, where we both had work and experience. And it was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed my time at the AER. I had a fantastic team working on an important file. And I don't know what it is about me. Maybe I got an itch. So I have 2 kids, and I came back from my second mat leave, and maybe there was just something about getting back into the workforce that I wanted one more change up at least. So Valid came to light at that time, and here I am now, senior advisor with Valid, a tech startup company.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Lindsay. So, how has the experience been working in Valid in terms of, the pace and the environment? Would love to hear more.
Yeah, it's been relentless. The pace is relentless. So one of the reasons why I came over to Valid, when I was with AER, one of my focuses, one was methane regulation development in general, but I had a focus on fugitive emissions and alternative detection and quantification technologies. What I saw in Alberta was the increased deployment of these technologies, and that deployment resulted in increased generation of emission-related data. So seeing that side of things from the regulator and then coupling that with the opportunity that presented itself at Valid as an emission management software tool at the time when this industry was facing the challenge of increased data generation, I said there could be something here. I think this is a real opportunity. So that's kind of why I came over to Valid. And I've been here now a year and a half. I started here last May, which is just wild to me that time goes by so fast. But and that kind of speaks to the relentlessness of the pace here. It is a fast pace, right? We are software as a service company. So we have software product development, and we also have a services branch. So now I'm exposed to both the product development side and the services delivery for clients that have, great expectations, as they say. So I wear a lot of hats in this role, I would say. I'm part compliance advisor. I am part marketing staff. I am part sales staff. In my role, I kind of respond to where the need of the organization is. And really what I do in this role is try and leverage my experience as someone who has assessed policy implications for oil and gas operations, someone who's developed methane regulations, and as someone who's really built a network of trusted peers to try and bring value to product development, to client delivery, and to the overall success of Valid as a fairly young organization. Yeah, it's interesting. It's fun, exciting. It's ever changing.
Very happy to hear that, Lindsay. I'm glad you are able to, take on many hats and contribute in different aspects of the organization. So really happy for you. Now, in terms of the challenges that you see in the environmental, regulatory, oil and gas space, would love for you to touch more upon that. What sort of challenges do you see in this space?
Oh, I would say to kind of roll it up to the highest level, the biggest challenge that I see and that I've seen probably in the last 5 years is change. Let's kind of roll it up to the concept of change. Industry has changed, technology's changed, the expectations of stakeholders have changed, and at the more detailed level, regulation has changed significantly, and regulation has changed in a way that has become more strict on emission management, and it has changed in a way where the expectations of emission quantification and reporting are more significant as well. There's a quote that I like. I like quotes. I don't know if you've seen any of the presentations I've given Arjun, but I like quotes. So there's a quote that says, "The world hates change, yet it's the only thing that has brought progress." And I love that quote because I think it's representative of a lot of the things that we see here. Yeah, people find a certain level of discomfort with change. Change can be hard. And once you accept change and we start to see some of the implementations of these emission reduction projects, of the improvements to emission quantification, we do really see progress. And I think it's fantastic. And we'll keep seeing that progress, but it's going to come with more change.
Thank you for sharing that, Lindsay. So now let's deep dive into the products Validare is offering. If you could share more about the specific products, what sort of pain points it is attending to, what sort of emission it captures, and where are your target customers located? Would love to hear more on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Validare, we've gone through some iterations, but at the current point in time, we offer one platform that's simply called the Validare platform, and that one platform can help clients meet various outcomes. So the primary outcome that we're focused on supporting clients with today is emission quantification for the purposes of supporting regulatory reporting requirements. Our client base is primarily small, medium, large oil and gas companies, both within Canada and the US, and they range on the supply chain from extraction and production all the way to distribution and transmission. So we have a small foothold in that market right now, and we look to grow and expand within that market. I've kind of gone back to this concept of change in my mind a number of times as I was thinking about this podcast. And I think that once you accept change and accept those challenges that I kind of mentioned in the last question that come with change, then there can be some real benefits to industry when we're talking about emission management. I'd say we're very appreciative of the clients that we have and the customers that have chosen to work with us and grow with us, because we ourselves are also changing. I work with some of the smartest individuals I've worked with in my career, and they're building something really fantastic as a solution that's going to help address a number of different challenges. It's going to address data management challenges. It looks at quantification methodology challenges, reporting efficiencies, and emission insight generation. These are all things that if you were to deliver in any one of those categories, there would be real benefit and value there. And we're trying to tackle them all. So it's really exciting work. It's challenging work. But like I said, that challenge and that change brings progress. And then in terms of target customers, which I think is the last part of your question, really anyone who needs support or needs change in the emission data management space or regulatory compliance space, we would love to work with. The other side of it that's what I wanted to kind of mention as well. We are not just a software. So I've spent this whole answer talking about the software side of it. We are a software as a service company. And I would be remiss not to highlight the services side of this company as well. We certainly have a target that's more reliant on the software side of things. But the delivery and the value from our services team is really fantastic and impactful. So that might look like support on implementation of software, support on reporting generation for emission quantification regulatory requirements, or it might look like one-offs. I was delivering a report this morning on a carbon strategy framework to a client, and that was purely services. And it was, I really enjoyed getting to do that side of it as well. So fairly narrow target market for right now, and a space that we play well in right now, but there's going to be a lot of growth and change even within that target market.
That's great to hear, Lindsay. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, as this product is being developed, what are some of the challenges that is being encountered? And also with AI coming into the play, what is the AI roadmap and incorporation of AI into the product in Validaire?
AI, just the easy questions to tackle in this podcast, hey? Okay, so let's start with the first piece. Um, Biggest challenge, I would say. So, and again, I only came on to Validera about a year and a half ago. When I came on, the organization had found a good product market fit. Everything that I talked about in the last response was clear. It was intentional. It was the product market fit for regulatory emission quantification for regulatory reporting. I am aware that previous iterations of this company had different hypotheses on what would be the right market fit. Probably even not even 5 years ago, there would have been a hypothesis that voluntary markets and voluntary standards for emission quantification would have driven change, with the hope that a company were to sign on to these standards and be able to monetize meeting something that is outside of regulation. I think they found that the uptake wasn't as significant as they thought, and the monetization potential wasn't as significant as they thought. But what we did see over that period was that regulation, like I started off with, kind of saying regulation was developed, was expanded, was more stringent, and we've seen industry respond to that regulation. And that's where I think the challenge was. And now that we've solved that challenge, it's the time to really grasp on to that, leverage it, and see what it can bring. So the AI question. So I'm not on product side either, right? So I'm sure that there's more specific, detailed items on the product roadmap that might have AI. What I have heard and seen within the organization is a cautious approach to the integration of AI. It's right now maintaining awareness, evaluating opportunities, and assessing how we could do it in a way that maintains the integrity and the security of our clients and our clients' data. So right now, we don't have integration of AI, and there's so much other stuff to work on right now, like emission quantification methodologies and reporting templates and dashboard development for really interesting analytics. Down the road, if we do choose to go down the AI path, I can see there being even some, cursory value in things like little search tools. We hold workshops in Canada and the US that I have the privilege of running. And it was actually in one of those workshops I think this one was in Oklahoma City. And we had the conversation of AI integration came up. And this one particular individual made the comment of Clippy. Do you remember in Word, Microsoft Word, there was a little paper clip? This is like 20 years ago. There was a little paper clip and he would pop up and ask you about certain questions or what you wanted to do within Microsoft Word. So my mind went to a little, methane cloud bubble or something, and we'll have to come up with some name for it. But this little helper within our platform that would, what's the latest iteration of methane regulation in Alberta, or within my data set that's housed in Valid Air, what's my top emitting facility? You can find those insights other ways in the product right now, but having that integrated with AI could be an opportunity there.
Absolutely, for sure, Lindsay. Now, as environmental regulations keep changing, reporting requirements change, formatting requirements change, how is Validaire staying abreast with those changes and updating its product continuously?
Well, that's part of my job. That's a big part of my job. We have a team of 3 advisors here at Valid Air, who focus on both Canada and the US. and we stay connected with our networks in industry and government so that we can anticipate the changes coming through draft releases. We subscribe to newsletters and information releases so that we have kind of maintenance of that awareness. And then when there are final publications, it is our role to do that really deep dive into what those requirements entail, how much change has been realized from a previous iteration to a current iteration. And then we do a few things with that information. We use it as kind of valuable communication to provide to our clients or to the market through webinars, through papers, that sort of thing. And we use it internally to inform product development and inform our services. So it maybe starts off on the front, kind of leading edge as our responsibility, but it's really a responsibility of the whole organization if we want to develop a product that's going to be responsive to all that change.
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing that, Lindsay. Now, in terms of future trends in the oil and gas emissions space, where do you see the future trends, and how is Validaire sort of expanding its product portfolio to meet those trends?
Yeah, okay, this is a good question, and it's actually something that I've been spending a good amount of time thinking about lately. And I would classify it as one of the big trends that I am seeing is moving towards measurement informed inventories. And what that means is moving from a state where emission quantification relied on things like population counts, activity factors, and emission factors to now relying on field level either supply or output based measurement or larger site level measurements as well. So integrating some of that measurement into emission quantification is now something that is allowed. So the primary regulation in the US is US GHGRP, and for oil and gas, it's Subpart W. So if you've heard of the term Subpart W, it's just had a major revamp. And what one of the key elements of that revamp was to include calculation methodologies that allow for the integration of measurement. They don't require operators to include measurement, but the allowance is there. And the benefit is if measurement gives you a more refined baseline, and if that refinement results in a reduction of your emission profile from maybe a more conservative emission factor baseline, then there could be benefit there. We see carbon pricing, we see methane waste fees. Anything you do to reduce that baseline can reduce your exposure to some of those costs. So that's a real trend that I am seeing in the emission kind of quantification and reporting space. And then in terms of Validaire expanding our portfolio or market, well, one, it's going to be responsive to that trend and that change, which we do, and we're building the methodologies to allow for the integration of measurement and the tools to allow that field data collection. And then I'd say, in my mind, one of the ways that we really expand portfolio and market is to deliver this value and this response to our existing clients. This oil and gas environmental space is small. I had a peer that I worked with a while back, and he referred to it as the usual suspects, right? We have a lot of usual suspects working in this space. So I think that if we are able to really deliver on our existing kind of portfolio and on the response to something like a measurement informed inventory, do that well, create product and thought partners in our existing clients, then I think that success will speak for itself and open doors for new and exciting things and clients.
That's great to hear, and thanks for sharing that, Lindsay. So now, in terms of career, you've been such a seasoned leader in this air emissions regulation space. For somebody who would like to follow your footsteps and pursue the same career path, what sort of advice would you have for them in terms of acquiring skill sets and attending certain relevant conferences?
Well, first off, I'd say reach out to me and let's go grab a coffee. And I think that that's one of the best ways that you can do it, is try and learn from someone that's been in that space. So we'll leave my LinkedIn contact information, I think, at the end of this, but I'd be happy to do that. And then the other thing, I think, in terms of, skill sets and getting into this kind of career, two absolute musts in my mind are a focus on soft skill development. So looking at communication skills, writing skills, presentation skills, and even the concept of networking, refining that skill of networking so that, outside of going for coffee with me, you can go and go to a conference or go to a young women in energy or young professionals in energy event, and go and meet someone and create that connection so that you can learn more and learn about what the right career step for you would be. So that's the first one. And then the second one is making sure you know about the industry. Build up a foundational knowledge of oil and gas production, oil and gas extraction, hydraulic fracturing, oil and gas emission sources. And if you want to work outside emissions, but in the environmental space, you're looking at things like land disturbance, species and biodiversity, and water management as well. So there are lots and lots of resources out there, whether it's through CAP, an association that I mentioned before, where you can just learn for free about the oil and gas industry, and having that knowledge to come into a career in the industry is really important. And then the last piece that I'll mention, instead of conferences or whatnot, is a program called Edge Up. And I have some kind of personal connection to this. I had a really good friend who worked for years as a geophysicist in the oil and gas industry. And sometimes change comes at you whether you want it or not, and you have to respond. And being removed from that geophysicist role, she was then presented with the opportunity to participate in this program called Edge Up. And it is a program that probably is tied to the third skill that I would recommend. It's data analysis and visualization skills. And it's a program that will take displaced oil and gas staff, workers, and train them in a different skill set so they can apply their smarts and their work ethic and their knowledge, but now apply it to something that's more modern, more in demand, and more tied to that data analytics type of role, which is really important in a career like emissions and regulatory reporting, because it's all about data and it's about communicating a good data story.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lindsay. Such great advice and resources. Really appreciate that. So that concludes the formal portion of our interview for today. We like to end our podcast with a fun segment called a rapid fire, where our viewers and listeners get to know a little bit about the personal side of our guests. Now, as part of this rapid fire round, I'll be asking you 3 quick questions. Are you ready?
I think so.
Great, Lindsay. So firstly, as this is a tech podcast, would love to hear what's your favorite software app or a hardware product that you enjoy using?
Okay, so I'm going to go outside of business related and work related stuff, even though we do have a mobile app, and I will give a plug for that as well. But for me right now, the ones that I like to use in my personal life are 2. So I just got an Apple Watch recently, and maybe I was skeptical before, but I will say the technology, so both the hardware and the fitness tracking app of an Apple Watch, have motivated me to get more steps in, to recognize when my partner is doing something that is maintaining health and fitness. So maybe as much as I was resistant or hesitant to that change, I have fully embraced the Apple Watch and the associated fitness apps that come with that.
That's great to hear, Lindsay. Now, secondly, what's been a book that you've read that has had a big impact on your life, and why?
Yeah, this one was a challenging question to try and come up with a response to. There are, I think there are some obvious answers that I would recommend in this space, particularly if we're tying it to, career advice. Grit was one that came to mind about perseverance, and a lot of the messaging in that book really resonated with me. But the one that I ultimately landed on was just a book that um, it's not tied to skill development. It's not tied to that, but it just resonated with me. It was very impactful, and it's a book called Educated, and it's a memoir about an individual who grew up. I forget where she had grown up, but she was born into a family of survivalists, and her whole world was so um, kind of predetermined almost to be part of this world. And she had to do some self-discovery, some reflection on what she wanted her life to look like and how she would kind of make that happen. There's a good, again, back to the quotes in this book, but a really good quote on what this education memoir is about is that it offers the perspective to see one's life through new eyes and the will to change it. And when I read that and I kind of thought about this common theme of change throughout the podcast, I said, okay, this has got to be it. So it was a fantastic read. It was impactful for me, and I would highly recommend going out and reading that book.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And lastly, do you have any, final words of wisdom for our audience members, whether it's in a short story, a quote, or anything?
Again, I will end off third time's a charm, and I'll end off with one more quote. Um, Earlier on in my career, this is probably 10 plus years ago now, I was active with an organization in Calgary called Young Women in Energy. If you haven't heard of that organization, you should. You should participate. It's fantastic. And I remember attending an event there, and unfortunately, I cannot recall who said this, but what they said resonated with me and has stuck with me throughout the course of the next 10 years, and it will stick with me the rest of my career. And it was simple and it was to the point, and all it was a quote that said, work hard and be kind. And I've taken that to heart, and I try and do that in every day of my career. And I think if people were to work hard and bring in a little bit of kindness into their day, we'll all be better for it. So that would be the quote that I would love to leave off with: work hard and be kind.
Very well said, Lindsay. So thank you so much. And that concludes our podcast for today. What is the best way for our viewers and listeners to get in touch with you?
Great. I mentioned at first LinkedIn, so please go and look me up on LinkedIn, Lindsay Campbell. Um, a very uncommon name. No, just kidding. But Lindsay Campbell, Validaire, AER. Find me and add me on there. And like I said, reach out, send me a message, ask to go for coffee. The other place you can find contact information for me is on our Validaire website. So I would welcome you to go and have a look at our website, see what we do, and reach out through those channels as well.
Great, Lindsay. Thank you for that. So thank you so much, for being on the show today. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure hosting you. And thank you so much for sharing your subject matter expertise today. From the team at Energize, wishing you and the entire team of Validaire lots of growth and lots of success.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
For sure. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our episode for today. And remember, you're one product away from transformation. I'm Arjun Chaudhary.